Back in 2017, I bought a hardy orange tree. I'm not totally sure what age it was at the time, but it was fairly young. And here I am now in the spring of 2024, and this plant is in flower for the first time. So of course another name for the hardy orange tree is the bitter orange, right? It has a very strongly sour flavor to it, probably a good bit more intense than your average lemon. The Latin name, of course, is Poncirus trifoliata, or Poncirus trifoliata. You know, in traditional Latin, the C is usually pronounced hard, but with the modern scientific uses that we use Latin for, sometimes that gets a little muddled sometimes. But the trifoliata, right, that species name of the whole Latin name, is important when it comes to identification. So we can see that the tree actually produces 3 leaves, right, much like a clover, right? So it's trifoliate leaves, 3 leaves. Now on the leaf stem, that's technically called the petiole, and that petiole is winged, meaning that it has kind of like leaf type structures on that stem as well, making it look a little bit more ovular, as opposed to like a normal leaf stem that might look like a twig or something like that. Another important characteristic of this hardy orange tree is that it has quite large thorns, especially on its branches and stem, and so these will deter a lot of herbivores, right, like deer, rabbits, etc., making it a crop that doesn't really have to be protected from herbivory quite so much. It's also important to watch out if you are harvesting the fruit or working with or around the plant, but these trees in some cases can also be used as maybe a living fence or something of that nature that might help to keep herbivores, larger herbivores especially, out of areas where you might not want them to be. So the tree does of course produce some fruit. It has a lot of seeds in there. In the cross section it looks a lot like a lemon or an orange, and on the outside the fruit might be like a greenish yellow orangish type color to it. Now of course back in 2017 I only bought 1 plant, and it just kind of worked out that it happens to be self-fertile too, so you don't have to have multiple plants for pollination success. Although if you have multiple plants it might help increase fruit production, but in many cases just 1 plant should work just fine. And this hardy orange tree is in the Rutaceae family, right? So that is in the same family as lemons, oranges, limes, grapefruit, and all those fruits, but also some herbs, right? Like a rue is actually an herb that's in that citrus family as well. So I also want to note that in some areas this plant can be deemed as invasive. Now this claim is usually made in areas closer to the equator, where it is warmer. Up here in zones 6, 7 and higher, it's not really that invasive. In fact, I hardly ever see it at all. But this plant is not native to North America, so depending on where you live, just kind of be mindful of if this is a plant, if you want to include it in your landscape or not, what would be an ecologically responsible thing to do. It looks really cool, like it's a citrus fruit and it can grow up in northern climates where we actually get snow and it gets cold. It's usually hardy up to zone 7, 6, 5 or so. I'm in zone 6 to 7, and this plant has grown just fine. It's never died back due to any frost or anything like that. It does flower during April, kind of mid to late April. That was the case this year, right? So if you want good fruit production, as long as you don't get any hard freezes during this flowering time, it shouldn't be too bad. If you are expected to get one, you might want to cover it with maybe some sheets or a blanket, or wrap an old carpet around it or something like that. That will help to keep the frost off, at least during the nighttime, and then you can remove it during the daytime, right? So is the hardy orange edible? Of course, this is not something I've tried. However, I do have the intent to try it hopefully this year, now that it's finally in flower. Hopefully I will be able to get some fruit off of it. So with the research that I've done, my intent currently is to use it like I would lemons or limes, using the juice and adding it to foods that might impart a sourness to it, maybe like you know, a hummus, instead of using you know, lemons that have to get shipped all the way from Florida or California or wherever, halfway around the world. I can maybe, hopefully, grow a hardy orange right in my backyard. You know, local citrus. And also the skin of the fruit I might also try to use as like a zest, kind of like a spice in different types of dishes, much like I would a lemon. And I also want to note that this year, since the tree does flower kind of early, I wanted to make sure I had as successful of pollination as possible, right? So I went ahead and used a paintbrush to kind of pollinate the flowers right on the tree. You know, pollinating one and then pollinating another one, and then going back to that first one, pollinating it again, finding other flowers, and just kind of spreading that pollen around to different flowers. So with that, I'm hopeful that I will be able to get some viable fruit production this year, and I can kind of start experimenting with this hardy orange fruit. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video on the hardy orange. I am really looking forward to see how things progress this year, if I can get some fruit that I can start to experiment with and incorporate into different recipes, and just kind of see what I can do with it. And you know, local citrus in like a temperate climate, zone 6 or zone 7, you know, it's pretty cool. Alright, so thank you so much for checking out this video. I appreciate it as always, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Take care.